When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind at speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.
Hey, welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drewbie Wilson. With more than 2 decades in sales, I've seen it, been through it, heard about it. Now I'm bringing it to you, my favorite people in the world, the sales community. Because let's be honest, this is the greatest job on earth. Doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what personality type, you can make an amazing life in sales. Today's guest, no stranger to the journey. He's a man that's going to bring a lot of great content. It's my friend, Mr. Trevor Blake. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Drewbie. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. And I'm excited. I want to jump right into your sales story, and I know it's going to be good because you have a killer accent to go with it, brother. So let's hear it.
Well, in America, it helps in sales because I can get away with anything. So, okay, I'll start. So I'm known now really as a serial entrepreneur because I build companies and sell them. And the reason I'm successful at that is because I started out as a trainee sales rep in the pharmaceutical business. But funnily enough, or ironically enough, I did it because I needed the money because I couldn't afford the mortgage, and it doubled my salary overnight. But I thought I'd get fired because I honestly thought I'd be no good at it. And so I thought I'd do it for as long as I can and get away with it. And I was terrified, but it turns out I was really good at it. I had no idea. I didn't think I could sell rope to a drowning man, and yet I turned out to have a very good sales career. I actually went from trainee sales rep to vice president commercial development in about 7 years, which is pretty amazing, right? You know, fantastic lifestyle. And like you say, it's so much fun I never expected to have. You know, if I think back to my very first day in sales, I was so nervous that I rushed through my first interview. I had my regional manager, my trainer with me, and I rushed through the interview so quickly that I'm sure he couldn't even remember a thing I said. And as I was backing out, I had a brand new shiny briefcase I'd bought for the new job, and I pushed it through the glass door, and it smashed the lower half of his glass door. So, oh, no. I mean, he remembered me, and I was able to get back in, but it was a terrible start. So I always remember to go from that to, you know, now building and selling companies for hundreds of millions, just a blast. And it's only possible because of sales, with the confidence that, you know, learning and working and going through sales, it gives you so much confidence you feel you can do anything.
Well, and I appreciate that story because I want to touch on the fact that, like in sales, when you're getting started, sometimes you mess up, right? You happen to go to this interview, you feel like, oh my gosh, did I say the right things? I rushed through my process, and then you bust the window or the door on the way out. Like, started off pretty rough. However, how did you go from that mindset of like, oh my gosh, I completely bombed this thing, to showing up confident and ready to start the next time that you went in? Because I think there's a lot of sales professionals that they have one bad call or one bad deal, and it kind of just snowballs into them not being able to get back on the horse and start. So like, what did you do to just get back in there and take after it?
Well, you just keep going. I mean, first of all, my source of motivation was a desperation. I didn't want to lose the house because I couldn't afford the mortgage. So I was willing to do whatever it takes to survive as long as I could. So that was an important aspect of it. And then as I sort of calmed down and learned to breathe properly and learned to have that little bit more confidence. And that's because I had a great trainer. He was really good, and, you know, nothing I did surprised him, and he'd seen it all before. So he was able to help me through that. But then I started to realize that why I turned out to be good at sales, or why I was becoming good at sales, was oftentimes I've forgotten what I'm supposed to say. And so I ended up listening more than talking, which is the opposite of what I do now, actually. And I found that to be so powerful. So then when I became a sales manager, the first thing I noticed when now I was training people was that they talk too much and they don't listen. And the skill is in listening and responding to what you hear, not just telling people how fantastic you are and that your product's the best thing since sliced bread. So listening for me was very, very important. And also, I don't know if you found the same thing, Drewbie, but there's a pressure to make lots of calls and lots of sales. And it's a pressure to get so many calls in a day and that sort of thing. And I found that led to a kind of burnout and performance anxiety. And so what I started to do was deliberately take lengthy breaks. I would take 2 hours over lunch. I didn't tell my regional manager because he would have fired me. But he'd expect me to get 5 calls in at that time. But I would take nice long breaks. And then I found that when I came back, I was really fresh. And I found it was better to have maybe 6 to 8 really good calls a day than 20 calls that were no more than, say, conversations. Because I came back fresh, I remembered to close the sale. I remembered to ask for the business. Whereas when you're making so many calls, you forget all that stuff. So that was helpful.
I appreciate you sharing that, because it made me think about, like, when I'm working with our clients, and in my books, I talk a lot about the 100-10-2 rule, which is, as a sales guy, you're making 100 outreaches a day. Of those 100 outreaches, you're trying to have 10 good conversations, because out of those 10 good conversations, you're likely to get 2 people that you can move the needle forward on their deal, right? So, like, big picture, a 2% close rate on all of your conversations. But I always remind people, it's not just the quantity, it's the quality, because if you're having 10 good conversations, they're going to take 20, 30, 45 minutes to run through the whole presentation when you slow it down, when you're not rushing. And what I really appreciate was how you said, when you're taking the time to listen, because that is something that I agree with you. A lot of sales professionals are doing a shit job of, in that they're rushing through their script. They're trying to just hammer out whatever they got to do so that they can get to the end of the call, and either the person's buying or it's a dud lead. And so when you stepped into the training field, because you clearly mastered this to get to the point where they're like, he's so good, we want him to teach others what he's doing. How did you remind the guys to stay focused on the quality of the conversation and not getting overly passionate and excited about the product? Because, like, I'm a passion guy. Like, if I believe in something, I'm there. So how did you help these guys slow down and remember to listen more than they spoke?
The first thing was to get people to appreciate how privileged it was to actually get in front of a prospect, because that's hard work too. You've got telesales people in my day, telesales people behind you, helping you get, say, like you say, 100 potential prospects, and you might only get into 10. And so this is a priceless opportunity. So thinking it that way, the magic and the beauty of that, it tends to slow you down a little bit, but also, because you've managed to get in, your chances of success are really high, because you've been rejected by 90 people so far. So that means they like you, or they want you, or at least they're going to listen, or at least you're going to get into some type of conversation. But by explaining and teaching how valuable this next call is, because we're actually getting in to see somebody who might like our product, we cannot leave this golden opportunity empty-handed. And so you absolutely have to do 2 things. And the first is try a trial close. Like, I call them action closes, whereby you try to get another chance to come back in. Because it's very rare you sell someone on one call, one visit, or anything like that. Usually it's a process, usually. Yep. And so you want to come back and you want to continue the conversation. So you don't have to win it all today, but you can't leave by just saying goodbye and smashing a door. You've got to say, who else in this building would be interested in what I have to say? Because this guy might not need this thing right now, but he's probably thinking of somebody who does. And I find people are much kinder than not kind. And so people are always willing to help. So they say, well, you know what, John down the corridor, he might be someone you want to talk to. Let me see if he's in. And that's how you just keep going. I actually got a job doing that one time, because the guy I was supposed to be interviewed by had to go off on a flight and sent me a message to the hotel saying, sorry, can't see you. And I'd come all the way from the UK to Minnesota. And so I wasn't going to just walk away. So I actually went to the office, pretended I hadn't got the message, and then just asked one person after another, is there anyone who I can talk to and be interested in what I would have been talking to Mike about? And I ended up talking to about 15 people. They ended up having a conversation about me once I'd left. And like 2 weeks later, they offered me a job. And so you never leave without asking something. The other thing is an action close I really like is let's say you're a landscaper, you would say, I'm going to be back, and let's say you're not getting any sort of buying signals. You say, I'm going to be back in the area on Friday. I've do 2 gardens down the corner here. I would love to take you to see them just for 10 minutes. What time will you be available on Friday? And almost everybody's going to say, Friday. Oh, well, what about 10? Hardly anyone says, no, get off my property. The people are nice. So those are the things, like valuing the fact that you're actually in front of a potential customer. It's a rare and beautiful thing. So don't waste the opportunity.
Yeah, I love that advice. I don't think I've ever heard anyone specifically phrase it around the value of what you're really getting to do when you're having those conversations, right? Because, like, hey, I'd much rather talk to somebody that wants to talk to me and tell me all the stuff than consistently be getting hung up on and told no. So I love the reframe around the perspective of how important it is to know that these people are spending their most valuable asset with you, which is their time. And I will agree with you that people are more kind than they are rude. The issue is that it's so much easier to focus on the rude people than the people that were kind, right? I think there's a quote out there that's like, in a sea of 100 raving fans, you'll still hear the one hater that has something negative to say. And I think what you're talking about is really just that belief. And so I love the reframe. And what I want to know from you, as far as, you start in sales, you become a manager, you're training individuals, and now you've continued to level up that ladder to where you're essentially working with small businesses, taking them on, building them, and then, making a nice exit. What made you decide to go that route specifically?
Throughout my corporate career, because it's a successful corporate career, two things happened. One was I learned so much stuff that I could develop my own tools and techniques, or finesse the ones that I'd been given by previous trainers. That was very handy. But the second thing is, the higher up you go, the more meetings you have to sit in, and the more distance you get from your customer. And I'm not a corporate guy, and it did my head in. And I said, okay, I'm not going to go back into sales because I'm VP of commercial development here. And it's a brand new company, and it's, I have a chance to make an impact. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my own company, and I'm going to do it all myself, so I can use my tools. So, one of the things I always tell people, and you probably do the same thing again, is, and we haven't done it here, and I'm guilty of being flawed just like everybody else is. Whenever you're with a potential prospect, you have to mention what it is you're there to sell as often as you can in a cool way, not in a really annoying, irritating way. And so, we're in the business here. I am now in the business of personal development because I really want to try and fix what I feel is inauthentic out there. And so all these tools and techniques are inside. So trevorgblake.com is my website. That should be mentioned. I should, if I'm a good sales guy, be mentioning this every now and again. And the courses and the things that are available inside Trevor, a lot of freebies, but inside trevorgblake.com, bring all these tools and techniques that I managed to create from the sales environment and then through the entrepreneurial environment. And they're really powerful. And not surprisingly, they're almost exactly the same. Everything I learned going through a sales and marketing career are the perfect tools to have an entrepreneurial career. And that's kind of one of the reasons I like to talk about it, because people sometimes put a break between those two things, and they'll say, oh, my sales days are over. I'm going to be an entrepreneur now. And I find that if I have a talent at all as an entrepreneur, it's that, again, I'm not afraid to ask investors for their business. I'm not afraid to ask my customers to, try my proof of concept and stuff like that. Whereas I think if I just started in business, I probably would have missed out on a lot of that. I'd probably focus more on the finance or spent 2 years putting a business plan together. But as soon as I started my first company, the first thing I wanted to do was get out and talk to customers.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the entrepreneurial journey, and I'm using air quotes for those of you guys that are just listening and can't see it, but how different it is for every person. And that, to me, is really why I think sales is such an important conversation, because if you're going to go that route, you don't have the corporate media behind you. You don't have their marketing team and their sales team that's putting you up on that podium. You now have to wear all of the hats, and you have to understand that even if you're great at building the thing that you're great at, you still have to be a salesperson. And what I like about what you said, Trevor, is that you don't have to do it in like a spammy or obnoxious way. It can be a little more cool. It can be a little more relaxed. And as long as you're mentioning on occasion what you do, I had a mentor that always likened it to watching TV. Back in the day before streaming, we had to watch like 20 minutes of television, and then we had 2 minutes of advertising, right? And then we had 20 minutes of TV again. But we would sit through that 2 minutes of advertising to watch whatever they were putting in front of us so that we could get back to the thing that we wanted. I think when you're creating content and sharing your stories and putting that out there, I do believe people are that way now. They're okay being sold to as long as it's not nasty, obnoxious, or like gross. Think about the Super Bowl, right? And people watch they don't even care about sports, but they want to watch the advertisements because they're entertaining, they're educational, it makes them feel good, there's a connection there. And I think that's something that a sales professional really should take to heart and be okay with talking more about what they do and how they help people. It's funny you'd say that. I actually made a reel about it this morning where I'm like, hey, if you're not promoting yourself, there's millions and millions of people out there that don't know who you are, what you do, or how you can help. And you don't need millions of clients. You probably only need a couple handfuls to be really successful. And so, when you're working with these small businesses, like what's one of the first things that you really focus on from a development standpoint to kind of get them in that train of thought?
So there's a lot of things. So I'll pick probably what I think is the most important. Because of my experiences in the corporate world, I know how much time was wasted in meeting rooms and holding the hands of disgruntled employees. And at the expense of, no one was talking about upgrading our product or improving our customer service or any of those things. So when I find the same thing happens, because an awful lot of startups are people who've come from the corporate world and they bring those really bad habits with them. The first thing they do is have a meeting on a Monday morning. What are we going to do this week? When you should be out talking to customers and listening to them, and they'll tell you what to build and how to do it. And so what I try to get them into is to move away from the mentality of I've got to hire people, and get into the mentality. I call it the hub model. It's in one of my books, Secrets to a Successful Startup. And what it does is it says, okay, take that pressure off yourself and free up your time by hiring people who already know what they're doing. So hire vendors and contractors, even if it's slightly more expensive at the beginning, because what you gain from freedom to go out and talk and listen to your customers and play around with whatever it is, whatever offering you have, to build a proof of concept and to give it to somebody for free and get the feedback from that, that's priceless. But if you're spending all your days going through what is today a really complicated process of hiring people, you don't have the chance to do any of that. So when I go into startups, it takes me like 10 seconds to assess what's going on. And it's always the same thing, which is you're obsessed with hiring people. And it makes you feel you're making progress, and it makes you feel good. And it strokes our ego. We have to get away from that. You are now the salesman again. You're now the marketing manager. And guess what? You're also the janitor. You're all of these things, like you said. You've got all these hats on. So you have to think in a different way. I had to come out of feeling. I came out of kind of a supervisory mentality, and I had to go to a peer trust to trust mentality very quickly, or I'd never have made it. And I've built 7 companies now, so something's working right. It's not like it's 7 out of 100. It's 7 out of 7.
Proof of concept is important. And I think that's where, as you mentioned, so many people who step out of that corporate spot, the bad habits definitely come with them. And what I'd be curious, because you had mentioned, getting stuck in the hiring loop, how much of that comes back to the systems and processes, right? Can you hire someone who brings those systems and processes, or do you have to have those in place before you hire someone so that they can quickly jump into what you're doing?
No, so the contract and vendor hack, if you like, is really, I think, a smart hack for several reasons. One is you can pretty much get your own payment terms, so you can go 90 days without paying, which is very important at the beginning because cash flow is king, not cash, but cash flow, as we all know, I'm sure. And then the second thing is, if I hired contract sales organizations and contract marketing organizations, and they had their own human resources system. So they hired all of these people, but I buy a bit of their time. I think my first product was number 3 in the bag for the sales representatives. But because I was so bored to death with number 1 and 2, I pretty much got first detail with every single one of those sales representatives. But all I had to do was teach and coach and direct. I didn't have to supervise, and I didn't have to spend hours in meetings with really annoying human resource directors. I hope I haven't insulted anybody who's listening right now. But I've never had the human resources director say to me, Trevor, I've got an idea to save money. I've only ever had them say, Trevor, we need more people,
Yeah, human resources and underwriting, I give them a lot of slack because I know they're there to support us, And also, coming from the other side of the table as a sales professional, they are the bane of our existence. And I can't tell you how many memes that I've put out there about underwriting departments. So God forbid if anyone ever had to come in and start underwriting me, they're definitely going to be like, remember when you posted this meme, and you remember when you said this thing about us over here? Yeah, I don't know if you're going to get this deal. And it's like, but it is interesting to hear that, you can hire out certain parts of the process to free up your time to focus on the bigger vision, building the mission, and really, as you said, communicating with the clients in a way that allows you to understand what do they really want. Because that's something I think a lot of sales professionals, they get into the idea of, our product, our service, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it's the new, $1 million whatever, but they're not actually having the conversation with their clients of like, what do you really want? Like, because it doesn't matter how great my product or service is, if it doesn't fall in line with the thing that you're trying to do, whether getting out of pain or getting into pleasure, it doesn't matter. And so what do you find is the bigger driving force when a small business owner gets out of that? Is it like getting out of the pain of feeling overwhelmed, or like the desire of running the successful business?
It has to be a killer product these days. We live in a world where get big fast is kind of the concept, and I've had to adapt to that myself. You get. I remember being almost forced to read books in the 80s and 90s, Built to Last, and whatever the other one was called, From Good to Great or something like that. It was called.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, half those companies don't exist anymore. And it was said in that book, they'll be here for the next 100 years. Well, now a business has maybe 5 years to make it. And then it'll be bought up or swallowed up by somebody else or go out of business, or, due to better competition. So you do have to get big fast and have to think in a completely different way, which means get out of your own way. And then when you let your customers, so a killer product is really important, but how do you get the killer product? I see a lot of entrepreneur types sitting at home for 2 years and designing it and then convincing themselves that they have we all buy our own BS, right? And so we think, well, this is it, not realizing that someone else is building something even better than what you've got, and it's not going to take 2 years. And so you have to get out and let the customer help you finesse, help you upgrade. So what you're saying about getting inside the customer's head and finding out what they really need is critical. And don't take it personally when they don't have a need for what you have right now. But again, somebody there will know somebody who needs this right now, and they'll always put you in the right direction. The second thing is, and this is so true of sales too, but equally as an entrepreneur, the best business advice I ever got from a guy who built two $60 billion companies, by the way. I was waxing lyrical about a business plan I had, and he said, "Trevor, stop." And this story is in 3 Simple Steps, my New York Times bestseller, which I'm very proud of. And he said, "Trevor, stop. You don't know what business you're in until you get in the business." And that's what my sales manager used to tell me. You don't know what's going to happen behind that door till you get behind the door. So get behind the door. And it'll go in a way you haven't imagined, because as a salesperson, you're thinking all the time, when I ask that question, what am I going to respond to? What am I going to try and pull out of this guy? Always use a what question, never use a close-ended question. You've got all this going through your head. And the trainers would just say, just get through the door. You have no idea what's going to happen now. And so with business, it's been exactly that. I've started a business thinking I was going to fix one little thing, like this business I'm doing now, the personal development business. And it turns out you go in completely different directions. I just wanted to have conversations with people and say, there's a lack of authenticity in self-help, because most of the ones that are well known, the influencers, didn't achieve any success before what it is they brought, the message they brought, became successful. So, the book got an Oprah or something. And then they try to give the impression that they're this kind of genius. And people then wonder, well, how come my life hasn't changed? I've done everything it said in the book and it hasn't changed. So I wanted to get into personal development after selling a couple of companies to show that it works. And how did it work? Well, here, take the book. And keep and do it like that. So I did exactly what I'm preaching, which is, figure out what the customer needs, which in this case is authenticity. I want some tools and techniques that have been tried and tested. And here's a guy that tested them, and he's given them for me in this, 207 pages or whatever is in the book. And that's why I did it. I didn't start out saying I'm going to write a book and I'm going to force it on everybody. I mean, you can do that, but I don't think that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of pressure. and ends up in big lawsuits. And so, I do exactly what you do, which is, figure out what people want and then provide it, find a way to provide it.
Yeah, and I think it always comes back to the conversations that you're having. If you're listening well enough, they're telling you everything you need to know to give them exactly what they're looking for. And sometimes it's not a fit, and you got to be willing to say that and just say, hey, who do you know that it is a fit for? And other times you start realizing, like, hey, if I just shut up long enough, they eventually convince themselves to buy whatever it is that I'm talking to them about, as long as I'm pointing them in the right direction. And so, Trevor, I'm willing to bet we could probably sit here and nerd out for several hours about this. I love your style, I love your enthusiasm. I love the authenticity behind it, because that stuff really is important to me and our brand as well. And so I want to be respectful of your time, though, because I know you're busy building big companies, helping people. How do we come find you, follow you, check out more of your content, and find your books and everything?
Well, I've made it really simple. It's all in one portal. So it's at trevorgblake.com, www.trevorgblake.com. And I've put a bunch of freebies on there because I'm a sales guy and I'm so confident in my products. So there's a couple of free chapters of a couple of books. There's some free webinars because I know you'll want to go deeper. And, everyone's life is at stake and everyone's success is at stake. And we're all desperate to find best practices. And so I've put a lot of free best practices on there, knowing that once you've seen the benefits of it, you'll come back for more.
I love that. I appreciate guys like you that are willing to share those little nuggets of wisdom. It's what allowed me to step into my world of growth and personal development and getting to the point where I now have the benefit of doing the same thing, right? Helping people grow, helping people, implement the strategies that have worked for me. And I'm super excited to go check out more of your stuff, because I know, you're at that level where I can always learn something from you. And that's what I want you guys to think about today. If you enjoyed this episode, you got some value out of it, go share it on social media. It's a free thing that someone can listen to. Maybe you know somebody who kind of sucks at sales and, you want to help them. Send them this episode. Tell them to give it a listen. You don't have to say they suck at sales. Like, you don't have to do that. But you can say, hey, I listened to this. It made me think of you. I would love it if you check it out. I think you'll appreciate it. And that will help both me and Trevor, because we love helping people. And the best way to do that is to communicate, to share the message, and to get it out there. So, Trevor, thank you again, man. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us.
My absolute pleasure, Drewbie. Thank you. A lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, listen, if you guys wouldn't mind and you have a crazy story to tell, I'd love to bring you on the show. Head over to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Send us your details. Grab some swag from the store while you're there, a hat, a keychain, a wristband, something to represent that Call the Damn Leads movement, and then go pick up the phone, call the Damn Leads. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.
When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind at speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.